Have you ever felt as though your prayers go unanswered? Picture a 10-year-old child, all alone in the dead of night, watching the only person they love in the world slowly slipping away. What would you do if you possessed a mere $300, yet required 40,000 to save a life? And what if, in a moment of absolute faith, you decided to dial a random number at 3:30 in the morning? Today you will discover how an impossible call connected two hearts, and how a child's unwavering faith touched the man who embodies Jesus for millions on screen. But was Jonathan Roumie truly prepared for what he would encounter on the other end of that line? And what transpired when two words changed everything? It's Jesus. Prepare yourself for a story that will shake your faith in the impossible. The kitchen clock read 3 in the morning when Sophia's eyes fluttered open for the fourth time that night. Her brown hair tumbled disheveled over her slight shoulders as she slowly rose from the thin mattress laid out on the living room floor. The 10-year-old girl padded barefoot across the worn floorboards, carefully avoiding the creaks that might wake her grandmother. In the gloom, illuminated only by the faint glow from the street, she observed the irregular rise and fall of Rosa's chest as she slept on the faded old fabric sofa. Each breath the elderly woman took seemed an agonizing effort, a constant reminder of the frailty that had gripped their home in recent months. "Please, Grandma, just hold on a little longer," Sophia whispered, feeling tears sting her tired eyes. "I'll find a way to help you." Rosa had raised Sophia since the age of 3, when a car accident claimed her parents on a rainy winter night. The grandmother, then a robust 66-year-old, had undertaken the responsibility of nurturing her granddaughter with all the love her simple heart could hold. She worked as a cleaner in 3 different houses, rising before dawn and returning when the stars already dotted the sky. Her calloused hands bore not only the fatigue of arduous labor, but also the tenderness of one who made sure to prepare Sophia's dinner every night, help with homework, and tell stories about Jesus before bedtime. Now at 73, Rosa lay prostrate on the sofa with pale skin and lips tinged with blue, a victim of heart failure that worsened with each passing day. "My girl," she murmured in restless dreams, "forgive me for not being able to care for you better." Sophia heard those words and felt her heart clench, whispering in response, "It's I who should be taking care of you now." On the coffee table, hospital bills were stacked high, which Sophia had organized by urgency, even though she couldn't decipher all the complex medical jargon. The total cost of the cardiac surgery was marked in red pen on a crumpled sheet, $40,000. For a family living on the meager monthly dollars from Rosa's pension, plus the $300 Sophia earned from selling her crochet and bead crafts, that sum seemed an insurmountable amount. The girl had attempted to secure loans from 3 different banks, only to be rejected due to her lack of verifiable income or a guarantor. Each no she received felt like a dagger thrust into her young heart, a cruel confirmation that money dictated who lived and who died in this world. Sophia gazed at the expensive medication strewn across the table and quietly wondered, how can it be so difficult to save those we love? Then, with a bitterness uncharacteristic of her age, she added, why do good people always suffer more? Sophia walked over to the small makeshift altar in the corner of the room, where an image of Jesus Christ shared space with faded photographs of her parents and several candles already melted halfway down. It was there that Rosa had taught her granddaughter to pray, explaining that Jesus always heard the prayers of the needy and never abandoned those who cried out for help with true faith. The girl knelt on a worn-out rug, feeling the cold of the cement penetrate the thin fabric of her old pajamas. Her small hands trembled as she picked up the rosary with plastic beads that had belonged to her great-grandmother, the same one Rosa used to pray with every night before her illness worsened. The weight of those simple beads seemed to carry generations of faith and hope, as if every whispered Hail Mary from her family still echoed within those time-worn threads. With a voice choked with emotion, Sophia began to speak. Jesus, Grandma always said you perform miracles. After a pause laden with emotion, she added with desperation, please perform a miracle for her because I no longer know what to do. Tears began to stream down her childish face as Sophia continued her desperate prayer, clutching the rosary with enough force to leave marks on her delicate palms. She told Jesus about every medication Rosa needed to take, About the nights her grandmother coughed up blood and pretended everything was fine. About the constant fear of waking up and finding her lifeless on the sofa. The girl spoke of the doctors who explained the situation with complex terminology, yet whose gaze revealed little hope for those without sufficient funds for adequate treatment. She mentioned the well-meaning neighbors who suggested praying more and trusting in divine will, failing to comprehend that Sophia already prayed until her knees grew numb and her voice hoarse from so much supplication. The desperation in her voice mounted with each word, transforming the prayer into an intimate and agonizing conversation with the Creator. Her voice choked with sobs, she declared, "I know the Lord can heal her, because Grandma always told me his stories." Then with the last glimmer of hope she clung to, she implored, "But if a cure is not forthcoming, then help me secure the funds for the surgery." Upon concluding her prayer, Sophia remained kneeling for a few more minutes, awaiting some divine sign that never materialized as overtly as in the movies she watched on the old television set in the living room. The pre-dawn silence was broken only by the distant hum of cars passing on the street and the irregular rhythm of Rosa's breathing. Slowly the girl stood up, her legs tingling from remaining in the same position for so long, and gazed once more at her sleeping grandmother. It was then that her eyes fell upon the antiquated landline phone, one of those with a rotary dial that Rosa insisted on keeping operational, despite its age. A sudden, inexplicable, and urgent inspiration swept over Sophia, as if an inner voice whispered a wild idea that might be the answer to her prayers. She had never before called strangers, but at that moment she felt a strange certainty that she should dial a random number and ask for help. An almost audible thought crossed her mind. What if Jesus wants me to find someone who can help? Immediately afterward, with a determination that surprised her, she murmured, "What if this is his way of answering my prayer?" Sophia picked up the phone with trembling hands, the receiver's weight feeling disproportionately heavy, owing to the moment's gravity. Her heart pounded so fiercely that she feared waking Rosa with the thudding in her chest. She closed her eyes and began to randomly dial on the rotary phone, choosing numbers that came to her mind without any apparent logic. First a 9, then a 1, then a 1 again, and so on until she completed a sequence she hoped would connect her to someone willing to help a desperate child. When she finished dialing, she held the receiver to her ear and listened as the ringtones echoed from the other end of the line. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings that seemed to stretch into an eternity as Sophia nervously bit her lower lip. Gazing at Rosa, who continued to sleep restlessly on the sofa, she whispered softly, "Please let someone answer." Then she offered a silent prayer. "Jesus, please let a kind soul answer this phone." The 4th ring was almost over when a drowsy masculine voice answered on the other end of the line, sending Sophia's heart pounding even faster. It was the voice of a man who seemed to have been roused by the call, but displayed no irritation, only genuine concern over the possibility of an emergency. Sophia swallowed hard, summoning every ounce of courage she could find in her child's chest to speak with a complete stranger in the dead of night. Her voice emerged tremulous and faint, laden with all the anguish and hope she had accumulated over those terrible past weeks. She knew she had mere seconds to explain her situation before the man disconnected the call, assuming it was an insignificant child's prank. The voice on the other end spoke again. "Hello." Sophia felt her entire life hinged on the next words that would leave her mouth, and then she responded with all the sincerity of her desperate heart. "Please don't hang up. I desperately need your help." In Los Angeles, Jonathan Roumie woke with a start at the insistent ringing of the phone, his heart pounding with the sudden rush of adrenaline of someone jolted out of profound slumber. The 50-year-old actor fumbled in the dark until he located the device on his nightstand, knocking over a glass of water in the process. His brown hair was disheveled, and his stubble gave him a haggard appearance, a reflection of the grueling filming schedules that had consumed his recent weeks. The modest apartment where he had lived since moving from New York was plunged into darkness, only the faint streetlight filtering through the thin curtains and casting flickering shadows on the walls adorned with religious images and posters from the series that had transformed his life. When he finally managed to grasp the phone, his voice emerged hoarse and concerned, tinged with the apprehension of someone anticipating familial crises or late-night calamities. Jonathan glanced at the digital clock, which read 3:32 a.m., and thought to himself, "Who calls at this hour unless it's a dire emergency?" Then, his heart still pounding, he answered urgently, "Hello, is something wrong? Who is this?" From the other end of the line, Sophia's childlike voice reached him as a whisper laden with pain and hope, prompting Jonathan to immediately sit upright in bed and switch on his bedside lamp, banishing the room's shadows with a warm, yellowish glow. The child spoke slowly, choosing each word with meticulous care, as if fearing the man might hang up at any moment and take with him her last chance at salvation. Jonathan could discern in the background the distant ticking of an old clock and the uneven breathing of someone who seemed to be sleeping fitfully, details that painted a picture of simplicity and exigency in the actor's mind. His experience as a practicing Catholic had taught him to recognize genuine despair in people's voices, and something about that strange call profoundly touched his heart, already sensitized by his daily portrayal of Jesus Christ, a role that constantly made him reflect on compassion and service to others. As he listened to the girl timidly introduce herself, Jonathan felt an inexplicable shiver run down his spine, as if he were witnessing something far greater than a mere late-night call. With genuine tenderness in his voice, he responded warmly, "Sophia, my dear child, you can speak to me without any fear." Then, in an attempt to reassure the child, he added, "Tell me what's happening, and I will help you in any way I can." Sophia began to narrate her story with impressive maturity for a 10-year-old, describing her grandmother's situation with details that revealed the weight of a responsibility far beyond her years. Jonathan remained respectfully silent, only murmuring words of encouragement when he sensed the girl hesitated or when her voice wavered with emotion. As she spoke of the necessary heart surgery, the $40,000 she didn't possess, and her frustrated attempts to secure loans, the actor felt a lump form in his throat and involuntary tears well up in his eyes. He himself had known the anguish of dire financial straits, recalling the arduous times when he had as little as $20 in his wallet and mounting bills, a period during which he had knelt before a crucifix, seeking divine guidance for the direction of his life. Sophia's story resonated with his own experience of faith tested by adversity, yet amplified by the innocence of a child who had taken on adult responsibilities to care for the only family she had left. When the girl finished speaking, Jonathan remained silent for a few seconds, processing the gravity of the situation and sensing that something greater was orchestrating this improbable encounter. His voice thick with emotion, he told the child, "Sophia, I want you to know that your prayer has been heard and has reached me." After a pause laden with significance, he added with conviction, "I do not believe in coincidences when it comes to God, my child." The conversation extended for over 40 minutes, during which Jonathan posed detailed inquiries regarding Rosa's medical condition, the hospital's name, the responsible physicians, and all practical aspects of the situation. Sophia answered each query with astonishing precision, demonstrating she had thoroughly informed herself about every detail of her grandmother's illness and the requisite treatment. Jonathan could discern from the girl's demeanor that she had no inkling of his identity, treating him merely as a benevolent stranger who had answered her desperate phone call, which rendered the situation even more poignant and seemingly divine. During the conversation, the actor stood up and walked around the apartment, passing by the small altar he kept at home, where an image of Jesus coexisted with photographs of individuals he deemed significant to his spiritual journey. He paused before that image and offered a silent prayer, seeking wisdom on how to proceed in this situation that appeared to have been orchestrated by a higher power. When Sophia mentioned she had prayed for a miracle before making the call, Jonathan felt a tremor in his hands and knew he could not merely offer words of comfort and hang up. Gazing directly at the image of Jesus, he addressed Sophia. "My dear, I believe Jesus orchestrated this encounter between us in a truly special way." His voice imbued with growing resolve, he added, "I need you to provide me with your address, because at first light, I will come there to meet you and your grandmother." Sophia remained silent for a few seconds, as if unable to fully comprehend what she was hearing, and Jonathan could envision the expression of surprise and hope etched upon the child's face. When she finally managed to speak, her voice was imbued with such pure and intense emotion that it brought the actor to tears as he reflected on how the child's faith had stirred his heart in a way he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Sophia carefully provided the address, repeating each detail twice to ensure Jonathan had transcribed it accurately, and he gathered from her description that it was a simple neighborhood, far from the city center, likely inhabited by diligent individuals who struggled daily to make ends meet. The actor promised to be there around 10 o'clock in the morning, allowing him ample time to organize himself and strategize how he could genuinely assist in a situation that transcended a mere monetary donation. He knew he would require wisdom and discernment to navigate the situation appropriately without raising false expectations in the child, yet also without disappointing someone who had placed such pure and desperate trust in him. As he jotted down the final pieces of information, Jonathan told the girl, "Sophia, I want you to go rest now and take good care of your grandmother." With a paternal tenderness in his voice, he added, "I promise we will find a way to help both of you." After hanging up the phone, Jonathan remained seated on the edge of the bed for several long minutes, contemplating the extraordinary conversation he had just concluded and attempting to process the conflicting emotions the call had stirred within his heart. As an actor who portrayed Jesus Christ daily, he was accustomed to reflecting upon compassion, miracles, and divine providence, but he had never experienced in such a direct and personal manner what appeared to be a literal answer to a desperate prayer. The responsibility he felt was immense, not merely due to the financial implications of the situation, but owing to the purity of faith Sophia had placed in him, treating him as a divine instrument of salvation for her grandmother. Jonathan was keenly aware of his financial limitations, knowing he didn't have $40,000 readily available to simply donate. Yet he also knew he couldn't simply disregard that calling that seemed to come directly from heaven. He walked over to his makeshift office and turned on his computer, beginning to research the cardiac condition as Sophia had mentioned, the available types of surgery, and the medical costs involved, attempting to fully comprehend the situation before making any precipitous decisions. As he navigated through medical websites, Jonathan muttered to himself, "How can I be sure this is genuinely a legitimate situation and not some kind of scam?" But immediately afterward, recalling the purity in Sophia's voice, he corrected his thought. "No, that child was speaking the truth. I am absolutely certain of it." The ensuing hours flew by as Jonathan alternated between internet research, silent prayers, and phone calls to a few close friends from his artistic and religious circles, discreetly gauging the feasibility of organizing collective financial assistance. He knew that many people from the cast of The Chosen were deeply religious and philanthropic, always willing to assist in genuine situations of need. But he also knew he needed to present the situation responsibly and transparently. During his research, Jonathan discovered that the type of cardiac surgery required for the condition Sophia described indeed cost in the range of $40,000 in private hospitals, and that without the procedure, life expectancy was drastically reduced. These findings corroborated the veracity of the girl's story and further intensified the urgency he felt regarding the situation. As dawn began to break through his window, Jonathan took a quick shower, put on simple, comfortable clothes, and grabbed his wallet to check how much money he had immediately available, concluding that he could contribute approximately $15,000 without jeopardizing his own essential financial commitments. Gazing into the bathroom mirror, he mused aloud, "Jesus, if this truly be your will, grant me the wisdom to act rightly." Then with renewed resolve, he affirmed, "I trust that the Lord did not orchestrate this encounter with this girl by chance." By 9:30 that morning, Jonathan was navigating his pickup truck through the streets of Los Angeles, heading towards the address Sophia had provided, feeling a potent blend of nervousness and anticipation he hadn't experienced since his earliest acting auditions. The city's morning traffic was formidable, yet he remained unconcerned by the delay, utilizing the time to deliberate on how best to approach the situation upon his arrival at the girl's and her grandmother's residence. He had resolved to be entirely candid about his identity and profession, but also wished to unequivocally convey that he was there as a human being, driven by compassion, not as a celebrity performing charity for publicity. En route, Jonathan contacted Dallas Jenkins, the director of The Chosen, briefly apprising him of the situation and inquiring whether it would be appropriate to leverage his public image to organize a fundraising campaign should the need arise. Dallas listened intently and encouraged Jonathan to follow his conscience, reminding him that the series was specifically conceived to inspire individuals to live in closer alignment with Christ's teachings, which include caring for those in need. Upon finally arriving in the neighborhood where Sophia resided, Jonathan was struck by the unpretentious nature of the homes, all small but meticulously maintained, which spoke to the pride and dignity of people who strove daily to keep their families cohesive despite financial hardships. As he sought the correct house number, he mused, "This child and her grandmother merit every ounce of assistance I can provide." Immediately thereafter, emotionally bracing himself for the encounter, he murmured a prayer. "Lord, let me be an instrument of your peace and providence in this moment." When Jonathan finally pulled the pickup truck to a stop in front of house number 234, he observed an unadorned exposed brick structure with a small porch where a few potted plants evinced the tender care of someone striving to maintain beauty amidst hardship. The house was modest yet tidy, featuring a faded blue wooden door and windows protected by simple security bars, characteristic of working-class neighborhoods where safety was a perpetual concern. Jonathan took a deep breath, adjusted his hair, and checked his appearance, keenly aware that his physical presence could readily identify him as the actor portraying Jesus in the series, yet also desiring to appear approachable and human to Sophia and Rosa. He walked slowly toward the door, noting that his hands trembled slightly with the moment's trepidation, and knocked 3 times softly, not wishing to startle the occupants or awaken Rosa should she be asleep. A few seconds later, he heard hasty footsteps from beyond the door, and Sophia's voice inquiring who was there, a query that evinced the natural caution of a child who had learned wariness around strangers. When Jonathan identified himself, a silence fell from the other side of the door, followed by the sounds of locks being unlatched. Finally, the door swung open, revealing a small girl with brown hair and large expressive eyes who observed him for a few seconds before her eyes widened completely. With a trembling voice brimming with awe and emotion, Sophia cried out, "Grandma! Wake up, Grandma! It's Jesus from TV!" Then, unable to contain her emotion, she added through tears, "Jesus came to our house, Grandma. He really did." From inside the house, Jonathan heard Rosa's faint but emotional voice, calling her granddaughter's name and asking what was happening, a mix of confusion, concern, and growing agitation that made the actor immediately realize the situation was escalating far beyond what he had anticipated. Sophia grasped his hand with surprising strength for such a small child and tugged him inside the house, rattling off how she had prayed the previous night and how Jesus had answered by sending him to help them. Jonathan attempted to explain that he was merely an actor, an ordinary human being who had been deeply moved by their predicament, but his words were lost amidst the overwhelming emotion of the moment and Sophia's unwavering faith in his presence there. Upon finally reaching the living room, Jonathan saw Rosa lying on the sofa, pale and visibly frail. Yet her eyes shone with emotion as she recognized him from the series. He then felt the full weight of the responsibility he had shouldered by deciding to answer that late-night call. The elderly woman attempted to rise to greet him properly, but her body's weakness prevented it, prompting Jonathan to immediately kneel beside the sofa to be at her eye level and take her trembling hands. With tears streaming down her wrinkled face, Rosa whispered, "My Jesus, you truly came to visit us in our humble home." Jonathan's heart ached as he realized she was trying to correct him. "Dona Rosa, I am merely an actor who portrays Jesus, but I believe he has brought us together here today for a very special reason." Rosa's emotion upon seeing Jonathan was so profound that her already weakened heart began to race dangerously, causing her to clutch her chest and moan in pain while struggling to breathe with increasing difficulty. Sophia rushed to her grandmother, grasping her free hand, crying out her name in despair and pleading for her to calm down. But the elderly woman remained breathless, her lips progressively turning purplish. Jonathan immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and asked Sophia to retrieve the phone, quickly dialing emergency medical services while attempting to soothe Rosa with gentle words and reassuring gestures. Within minutes, the ambulance arrived, and paramedics stabilized Rosa sufficiently to transport her to the hospital, where Jonathan and Sophia accompanied them in a desperate race against time. Throughout the journey, the girl held Jonathan's hand tightly, whispering prayers amidst her tears. With a trembling voice, she asked, "Will Jesus let my grandma die now that you've come to help us?" Jonathan squeezed her small hand and replied with conviction, "No, my child, we will now fight together to save her." At the hospital, doctors informed them that Rosa required immediate surgery as her condition had drastically deteriorated due to the emotional encounter, and she had at most 12 hours before her state became irreversible. The attending physician, a middle-aged man with a solemn expression, reiterated that without the $40,000 to defray the cost of the procedure, it would be impossible to perform the operation at the private hospital where the city's foremost cardiologists practiced. Jonathan felt the crushing weight of responsibility on his shoulders as he saw Sophia gazing at him, her eyes brimming with tears and an unwavering faith that he would somehow resolve everything. He requested a few minutes to make some calls and managed to contact 3 friends from the cast of The Chosen, swiftly explaining the situation and securing pledges totaling $12,000. However, $28,000 were still needed, and time was dwindling rapidly. Looking at Sophia, who waited anxiously, Jonathan declared with determination, "My dear, I'm going to do a live stream asking for help for your grandmother." With tears in his eyes, he added, "Trust me, we're going to get this money." Jonathan switched on his cell phone and initiated a live stream on his Instagram profile, where 2 million followers from around the world could witness his urgent plea for assistance. With Sophia by his side in the hospital corridor, he recounted the full story of that extraordinary pre-dawn call, explaining how a child had prayed and dialed a random number that reached him, creating a situation he believed to be divine providence at work. His voice was choked with emotion as he described Sophia's pure faith and Rosa's critical condition, imploring his followers to make donations via an account he had instantly set up to raise the necessary funds. Donations immediately began appearing on screen: $100, $500, $1,000, and Jonathan read each name aloud, personally thanking everyone who contributed to saving Rosa's life. Within half an hour of the broadcast, they had already raised $15,000, but still needed to secure another $13,000 to reach the total amount. Upon reading a $2,000 donation, a visibly moved Jonathan declared, "Thank you, Maria from Chicago. May God bless your generosity." Subsequently, looking directly into the camera, he implored, "Please continue to contribute. Every dollar makes a difference in saving the life of this beloved grandmother." As donations continued to pour in, Jonathan resolved to personally cover the remaining deficit, utilizing his own savings to complete the requisite $40,000. He transferred $15,000 from his personal account to the fund, and within an additional 20 minutes of live broadcast, they successfully surpassed the target, accumulating a total of $43,000. Sophia observed everything with wide-eyed astonishment, unable to fathom that so many strangers were willing to assist her grandmother simply because Jonathan had asked. The physician was apprised of the payment and immediately authorized Rosa's preparation for surgery, which would be performed by the hospital's finest available specialists. As Rosa was taken to the operating theater, she was lucid enough to clasp Sophia's hand and whisper words of gratitude. Gazing at Jonathan through the oxygen mask, she murmured, "Thank you for heeding my girl's prayers." With tears welling in her eyes, she added, "Please look after her if I don't make it back." The surgery spanned 6 grueling hours, during which Jonathan and Sophia remained in the waiting room, jointly reciting the rosary the girl always carried with her. Jonathan taught Sophia some prayers she was unfamiliar with, and she, in turn, taught him others that Rosa had imparted to her, forging a profound spiritual communion between 2 individuals who had known each other for mere hours, yet were united by faith and an extraordinary circumstance. Throughout the anxious vigil, Sophia clung to Jonathan's hand without faltering, treating him alternately as the Jesus from television and as a cherished friend who had materialized in her life during its most trying period. Periodically, Jonathan updated his followers on the surgery's progression, and messages of support and prayers continued to pour in from individuals worldwide who had been deeply moved by the narrative. When the surgeon finally emerged from the operating theater with a smile, Jonathan and Sophia sprang to their feet, grasping each other's hands. With palpable relief in his voice, the doctor announced, "The surgery was a resounding success. Rosa is stable and out of danger." Sophia began to weep with joy and threw herself into Jonathan's arms, repeating, "Thank you, Jesus, thank you for saving my grandma." 3 days later, Rosa was awake and making a magnificent recovery, surprising the doctors with the swiftness of her improvement. When Jonathan and Sophia entered the room for the first time after the surgery, Rosa's smile held more vigor than it had in months, as she extended her arms to embrace them both with boundless gratitude. She thanked him not only for the life that had been saved, but for the unexpected benevolence embodied by Jonathan, who had continued to visit them daily throughout her hospitalization. Sophia told her grandmother about the live stream, about the thousands of people who had donated money to save her, and about how Jonathan had used his own money to complete the necessary amount. Rosa clasped Jonathan's hands and stated with profound earnestness, "I know you are an actor, but to me, you will always be an instrument of God." With tears of gratitude, she added, "Thank you for answering my granddaughter's fervent plea when she needed it most." 6 months after the surgery, Rosa and Sophia had cultivated the habit of watching The Chosen every night, commenting on each episode and praying for Jonathan at the end of each showing. Sophia launched an online platform for her handicrafts with the technical assistance Jonathan had provided, and now earned sufficient income to cover her studies and contribute to household expenses. Rosa regained her ability to walk normally and even secured light work as a cleaning assistant at a nearby school, where she recounted to everyone the story of how her granddaughter had prayed and found an angel disguised as an actor. Jonathan visited them whenever he was in town for series-related events, maintaining a profound and genuine friendship that transcended the extraordinary circumstances of their initial encounter. During one such visit, he found Sophia assisting an elderly neighbor with her grocery shopping, demonstrating that she had learned from Rosa the importance of caring for others. Observing the girl, Jonathan mused, "This child has grasped that miracles unfold when we act in love and faith." Then, with a smile gracing his features, he murmured, "God truly works in mysterious and wondrous ways." If the narrative of Sophia and Jonathan Roumie has resonated deeply with your heart and illuminated how a sincere prayer can move mountains, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. And tell me, have you ever encountered a moment where your faith was tested to its absolute limit, only to subsequently realize that God had an even grander design? Do share your experience in the comments section. Your personal account could serve as a profound inspiration to others. May God abundantly bless your life.